Council meeting. All ready to go, and then.
Is there a big
Okay, we
Recording in progress.
So do you want me to send her the link? Yeah, that's what I should. Thank you.
Any other people are having a problem or? Yeah, I was wondering if from there. Yeah, I can't. That would be in the calendar, and I don't know.
She did. Okay. There's that. Or at least maybe the one.
Oh.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay, we were just discussing we had some issues last night and. Are we having a bigger thing happening here, so.
You were good?
I think we're good.
All right. Now, maybe. I have to push the seat.
Yes, yeah. Green light.
Right on, green light's on, okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Homeless Advisory Board together. It's March 19th, still up at 5:03. Welcome, everybody, good to see you here. Let's go ahead and do introductions, roll call. I'm David Giels, and I'm the Behavioral Health Director at Coos Health and Wellness, as well as the current chair for this group.
Nicole Rutherford, City Manager here at Coos Bay.
I'm Ron Moore. I'm the North Bend representative.
Thanks, Ron. And online,
Stephanie Kilmer, Coos Bay City Councilor.
good to have you here, Stephanie. Anybody else online? All right, so let's see, we'll go ahead and start with. Guess we have a funding update.
Yes, so in the packet, just similar to what we did last month, just with some updates. You'll see just a little bit spent out of the HB 4123, the dollars that are the original pilot dollars out of the county's responsibility. So around 133,000 left there. Under House Bill 5019, some dollars spent there. Those are still really associated with the work that Alternative Youth Activities is doing, rapid rehousing. about $1.7 million there. And I'll note that the Salvation Army, we do expect to start drawing potentially, well, not potentially, but in April, we do expect a first draw to come out of their 750. So allocation. And then under SB 5701 or ORI, that's how we reference it internally, some dollars spent there. Again, those are related to work that Alternative Youth Activities is doing, and also same rapid rehousing. About a little over 830,000 left in that balance. And under the Youth Emergency Housing Assistance, that's YEHA, I need to add that reference because that's what we call it. Nothing drawn on that. I still need to get them an update on our some changes to the projects based on what we applied for. And maybe do some budget reallocations. So we are waiting for them to give us some feedback. OHCS, I guess I should give some language to who they are. OHCS to give us some feedback on vehicle purchase. One of the applicants, subrecipients wanted to purchase a vehicle, and that requires advance approval. And if you want to buy a used vehicle, that is a complication, because if you find something, you need to go get approval and it may not still be available. And so they're working on wrapping their heads around what buying a used vehicle would look like. So
With the grant are never easy.
yeah.
A lot of times there's provisions put in the grant saying if you have a vehicle, has to be, you have to do something with the title typically
yep.
and everything else that goes with it. So
Yeah, they want to make sure you're not basically reselling it right away and, recouping some of state dollars and using them in a different programmatic way. So that's where we're at.
any questions for Nicole around the funding? I just want to maybe, and I asked one thing, I just to make sure I clarify. So I know the grant period of a couple of these is under ORI is through 2027, but that's not exactly correct, right? I mean, that grant money is supposed to be spent by June 30th, 2025. Is that accurate?
It has to be obligated, so you can be covering costs past. And so our question is, we're going to prepay for, the people are allowed up to 2 years.
Okay.
So being able to prepay for that period, we'd still have reporting responsibilities then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know the YEHA one does extend to
Mhm.
26.
Mhm.
How
And
much
then,
money was in that last pot?
In Yeehaw,
The one that you mentioned last in your list, but you didn't say what the dollar amount.
622,000. That's the original award amount. And Bob, if you want to have, yeah,
We don't only have extra ones, but you're welcome to this.
Thank you.
And it's on page 3 is the financial summary.
David, is your mic open or on? Is your microphone on?
Thank you.
Thank you. I was wondering because I could hear Bob better than I could hear you.
I'll try to leave it on so that when I spout off, it catches me. And then basically just to kind of inform us, we're on the same page. The pilot grant, $133,000 is basically being we're not drawing it down at this point. We don't have any salaries. We don't have any expenses. So that amount will pretty much remain the same until this body takes some action around something financial around that grant. So that 133 is liable to stay there at this point. The 5019 though should be drawn down significantly here in the next few months. I think, right, you said if the Salvation Army draws a draw, that's 750,000 that will.
So our plan for that is roughly 250 over the next 3 months,
Okay.
250,000.
It draws.
Yeah.
And that should help their construction infrastructure costs related to Hope Village.
Yeah, I think and I'm sure Major Kaufman is going to be able to share some, but I think they're kind of working through some bid amounts to kind of refine that and get it back within, you know, what their funding received is estimated to be. So
So then bottom line, though, it looks like but per our planning, these grants, other than the pilot, should be spent down as we had planned, if everything goes sort of according to calculation.
yes,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
agreed. I think we're finally starting to get in a nice, comfortable groove. So
Anything else related to the fundings? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to project updates. Let's see. If we're okay with it, maybe we should start with Salvation Army's project.
Yes. Major Aaron Kaufman, Salvation Army. My Major David is just finishing up, speaking of program, hope the right of Bay. But this is for the outreach, the mobile outreach. And these are just local providers. I've met with, Bay Area First Step. And then if you go to the second page here, sir, you would like a copy as well.
Thank you.
You go to the second page, there's a rough schedule on what the outreach is going to look like. First Wednesday of the month to Myrtle Point Powers and Coquille, second Tuesday, and so on and so forth. And then on the back page is just what one of the meetings looks like. We're looking at securing office space in the various areas to do the mobile outreach. And it's with the team, the list that I have, and we're recruiting new members as well. And just trying to figure out what places we're bringing food, because some of the churches provide food and we don't want to, like we shared before, we don't want to step on toes. So we've already helped a couple people. And then Friday, we're interviewing for our supervisor for the mobile outreach team. And then we will have the 2 staff that'll be kind of organizing this a little bit more. And the goal is to have 3 outreaches a week. And then the 2 days a week is resource voucher writing, food bank writing, and then more of the homeless prevention with helping people, because we receive money for power bills as well. And so right now we are assisting someone in a hotel till they go to treatment on Friday. So this is all relatively new for the Salvation Army, but I'm joining the team that's already in place and just kind of building it up and showing it up for the mobile outreach for the community. And then like I said, Major David is continuing to work on finalizing the budget. We did put it out for bid. And some of the construction costs were a little bit higher. So we're looking at some options, maybe a phase 1, phase 2, but we are moving forward and hope to have everything complete in a timely manner for the Hope Village at the Bay. We're very excited.
I understand the construction costs, pin them down, they keep moving. So,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, I think they were about 300 times higher than originally thought. So we're reworking some things and kind of cutting some things out that aren't necessary, that are more a want and not a need. And the goal is to have people in houses. So that's what we're working towards. And if we have to do a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and the beauty of that is that we can start off with 4 units to get those started right away. And that is still 32 beds. So we're well within our requirement from the state. But then after phase 2, then maybe phase 3 starts involving more grant money and more community players and more foundations. So it could expand to even beyond. And that's happened in 3 different tiny house communities. Is they'll start out with 4, 8, 12, and they had only intended for 10, but now they have 24. And that allows community buy-in, and starting off small helps us to start off really strong and before we get too big. So we're moving and pushing forward.
Just to remind the board, the grant requirement is for 8
8 beds.
Beds.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you know, Home Village always was going to far exceed that. So if we need to modify it, we would not have any problem with the grant funding.
Yep.
So,
And I've, confirmed that with them recently even to the extent that, there'll be 16 beds essentially, or, potentially there could be in those 4 units. It just needs to be people in bed, like we have 8 folks housed.
Yeah.
So there could be the capacity. So even if there were 2 families of 4
Yep,
in 2 of the shelters, that would be our 8.
Yep.
To be in use beds, essentially.
and if I recall that when you say, you know, you went out for bid, that's for some of the infrastructure, right? The
yeah, we were hired,
and the
correct, excavation, power, yes. And we only received 1 bid, which unfortunately in the Salvation Army requires 2 bids. And if they're within a 30% variance, then we have to have a 3rd bid, which is difficult. So we are retooling. I think we brought in 4 or 5 different community contractors to see how can we do this as a team, as a community, to make this happen. Because again, the goal is to get people into beds.
So we can put this out as a public announcement right here that if we have contractors interested in
Yes.
in
Yep.
be doing a community service,
Yep.
considering maybe their bid being a little lower to help the community out.
Mhm, yep. So we're calling in friends, favors, and family right now. So, and it'll happen.
Perfect. And can you also just remind us, I believe there's a sort of groundbreaking schedule? Is that
We're
correct?
still working on that. I know there's a housing, not a coalition summit on April 10th. And I know the groundbreaking is happening for the North Bend property. And we're still, we haven't given up yet to have at least a groundbreaking or tour on April 10th at the Salvation Army facility. So Bangor is that Bangor School is the other property.
Yeah, if you could let us know so we can at least get the word out if that's what happens, because we won't have a meeting till after that date. So,
April 16th. Yep. So I'm sure Major David will be in contact with Nicole on a regular basis, but I am excited about the mobile outreach. And I think for the culture of the community right now, this is a good program to, to go out to where folks are and where they need help. So.
yeah, if people haven't heard about this has been, this mobile outreach has been really spearheaded largely by Berea First Step.
Yep.
And ADAPT, and a number of the other community partners, especially those that have, people with lived experience that are going out and trying to help. And so they've gone to these remote communities and tried to just outreach. And I think it's been very successful and really trying to reach people that otherwise would have a hard time accessing support. So
Yep.
glad that you all are going to be a part of that.
Yep. We're all doing it together. We found out the wish list, things that they need that they haven't been able to provide. So, filling in that gap again and, making sure we can do everything to get people housed, or if they are stranded here, help them as well. And then just on a side note, the Salvation Army has just received a small human trafficking grant. So now if we have some of our outreach that we meet those that have been human trafficked, we can make sure to transport them to proper facilities. So it's all good.
Thank you so much for your update. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
I would just add to that Coquitlam Indian Housing Authority continues to stand by, prepared to turn on our money spigot as soon as the groundbreaking happens.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've had communications with Anne to be able to kind of help support
Right.
our team kind of doing some of the paperwork
Right.
portions. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So appreciate the opportunity to do that kind of collaboration with them. So.
Nothing with housing happens just with one funding stream or one organization, does it?
No.
I didn't know if we're going to, did you have Nurse Away is not here to give.
They aren't,
Did you want to give an update?
I can just say basically what was shared last night. Scott Cooper, the director of AYA, came to our council meeting last night and he kind of spoke to that collaboration piece, and thanks to the city of Coos Bay and the school district, because the school district is kind of that funnel for the ARC, kind of that collaboration. He shared, and that was the first time that I had heard that we're at goal. So we're at 64. So we're meeting both SPA and Ori, or 5019 and Ori, in this current month. So pretty exciting.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so, and the other organization that we're supporting is Safe Families too. Is that
Yes.
the other, is that the other
Yes.
grantee?
And those, so the ARC, Safe Families, and then a portion for AYA is coming out of the Yeehaw dollars.
Yeah, and Safe Families, I think, is more focused on respite for families. Is that correct? That's
They
correct?
are.
Any question from the board regarding updates? No? All right. Oh,
Oh, good timing.
You're on Zoom.
you're late, Scout, but we were. Are you waiting to be let in?
Yeah. You're in on.
Was it?
It's your turn though.
It is. We were asking, we were just doing updates. So it's actually great. It's actually perfect timing.
Where's everybody?
We are.
You're everybody? Okay. Good. She probably heard this yesterday. Happy to say we are 90 days above schedule. So not only did we house the 32, we got the second 32, 64 people have been housed, signed leases. I think there's 3 that the leases are going to be going through at the first of the month. But yeah, no, we've delivered what we said we would deliver. There is still a lot of paperwork moving around between the city and us. Christina is not in the room. The change from the homeless response team to the city and the people we've been working with in the city has gone much smoother. Not smooth. But things are going very well. So, and I want you to really think about that. If you had 32 of your neighbors that were teachers and doctors, do you think you could get them apartments in here in Coos Bay? Or Coos County? I should go the whole county, because a lot of the apartments actually are coming out of Coquille. There was some apartment buildings that became empty and we just swooped up the whole apartment buildings. We are scheduled to be tight on the spa money and a little bit short on the Ori money. That's why I'm happy the man sitting next to me is sitting next to me. I don't know if you're following the Senate bills, SB something 11. Has made it through the House. It'll be going to the Ways and Means. That should kick on the second set of funding for the, and now I'm thinking of my acronyms, I apologize. For the Ori funding, that should hopefully move that one forward. And is Yeehaw running through this particular group, or is that just the city? Okay, so then the third grant, which is Yeehaw, I think we walked into it a little bit slower and used the lessons that we learned from SPA and Ori, and we are putting things in place before we start spending the money. Which means we're a little bit behind, but we have the data collected to show what we needed for what we're behind, and we're speaking with the state right now. For the Yeehaw money, we have gathered together all the 6 people around the state. We have a meeting coming up in Eugene. Don't quote me on the date. I think it's April 16th. And then the second part of it is talking about helping youth councils and boards to get their voice. We have organized with The Rock to bring in all these youth groups that are being funded through that Yeehaw group for one particular meeting, meaning that we're assuming about 50 youth are going to show up from around the state from different boards, and we're going to teach them how to have a voice. So, and we're excited. We did that using a cheetah. We're going to Winston to the safari place, and we're going to bring in the cheetah. So whatever it takes to hook, besides we're paying them. So we're going to pay them and have a cheetah. They'll show.
You're not gonna lift the cheetah out of the Winston, are you? You're not gonna, it's still gonna be there when I drive by, right? All right, just checking.
So the physical.
Oh, live cheetah. Oh, all right. I've never been inside. I didn't realize it was a live cheetah that mirrors the other cheetah.
I don't think it's as big. That's a pretty big cheetah, that one right there. So everything is moving forward very well. We're hoping that everything repeats again next year. Thank you for believing in NYA that we could make this lift. And it's been really, really good. I said something yesterday to the council to be working with the city. Those changes have worked out very, very well. That's it.
Can I ask it? So you said that that one grant is being spent more quickly than the other. I think if I heard you correctly, you said is it the Ori grant? I mean, I think that was what we started. You started drawing money off the Ori grant first.
We started with the SPA grant. We actually closed the Ori grant first because it's youth and families. That's who we
Right.
deal with. The SPA grant, we're questioning a little bit of the money at the end. We're going to have some left over. It depends on rents and how many people move in and out. There's too many moving pieces. That one's due to be spent out with maybe a little bit left over. The second one, the Ori grant, and if you think about it, one we did with $1.9 million and the other one only has $1 million. It's almost cut in half. We can already project that we're going to have some funding stream problems at the end of the Ori grant. But we hold our breath and hope that they replenish the money for the next biennium. If not, we go talk to Mr. Moore, who's got more.
I think I'm with the deep pockets.
No, it is the tribe. But no, so we're just already looking ahead. Where is it going to go next? How can we get prepared for that? And how do we make people? One of the things that I will report back, we were hoping to have better success with getting people more stabilized. We did get trained for rent well, which helps them to be better renters and understanding that they have a responsibility in this. We do have a workforce program, but we were not as successful getting our clients to the point that they're able to continue on. In fact, one of the more successful things that we did was to help buy down some trailers, which some of the people in these grants will now own those trailers and be able to afford their rental lot. The ones that we got into apartments, obviously we have 64 people that we're talking about here, so there's a lot of different moving parts. Without a quantifying data, just qualifying, we had more problems with the parents not stabilizing themselves than we did with the youth being able to get into jobs and get stabilized. Now, to the parents, I'm going to say that they have kids that they're dealing with. So it's really tough to figure out how do I get my kids taken care of and get a job and afford a rent that minimum wage job is not going to sustain. So that became a problem there. I always want to do more. I'll leave it there.
So you're talking about these sort of long-term challenges to getting people to be where they can really be more self-sufficient in terms of managing their own household and their own.
And even if we just start to think about if they had a HUD stipend of Section 8 or something like that, they are still, in fact, we have one, just heard this one, I came from my housing meeting a minute ago. Got them in on a HUD grant. It's a year later, they raised it 10%. They can't afford it anymore. It's as simple as that. Every year rent goes up 10%, up 10%, up 10%. If your cost of living isn't going up 10% or your HUD subsidy or your Section 8, whatever you may have, isn't going up with it, it ends up becoming, the homeowner's responsibility or the renter's responsibility. So more challenges, longer term challenges, lessons learned from these grants.
Yeah, I mean, if your wages aren't going up at the same rate as your housing expenses, you're going to be suffering year after year. Yeah.
We did struggle. We had the funding to get people in housing. And sometimes we want to get them housing first. Let's get them stable. Let's get them into housing. But then the apartment that came up was $1,400 a month. We're setting them up for failure in many ways. It was a very frustrating thing. And there isn't, when you find an apartment, you just got to jump on it. You got to make the move around here. So.
Well, I think we've had this discussion that a lot of these funding things are short-term fixes, right? They don't really get us to the long-term solutions, which is more affordable housing, right? So really, these are just Band-Aids to help us get to the point where we actually have more units on the market that people can afford. Because until that happens, all these things are not gonna really get us by themselves where we need to go.
Triaging.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here we almost a year later looking and saying, yeah, we may have done what the grant asked us, but we didn't get to where we were hoping to get to. And I will say that our community, earlier today, I was at a state level meeting and they were talking about our community and what we're doing with housing. We are doing some great things. But it's not quick enough and it's not going to be enough.
I mean, I do think, the Bangor School project with 100 and some units, maybe 150 at some point. I think the project in, Coos Bay potentially, the up above Cascade also looks like it could, really create some significant changes here that would maybe alter, this and then these bridge things that we're doing now, really, they give us a place to hand them off to, right? Rather than.
So there's three things that come to my mind. One is the baloney sites just sitting there for all this time. That one kind of drives me crazy. The second one is the idea that we're going to move everybody behind Cascade. It's going to open up the trickle down theory, right? All of a sudden these lower ones are going to be open. But that one coupled with the senior situations, more seniors are staying at home as long as they can, which is causing deferred maintenance. A lot of these buildings or the property management companies that we're dealing with are people that have jumped into the market to make money. And the way they make money is through deferred maintenance, which is going to be a problem for our city. It's going to be blight. We're going to end up talking about blight at one point or another. We talked about it during the pandemic can you remember the number of how many zombie houses we had? Over key word right there. We know we had a bunch. How many were actually registered? And that was trying to solve the problem. So we're going to have this problem in the city. What do we do about maintenance? Are these house blight? Are we going to smush them down? Even if everybody moves up to Cascade, middle class, what's going to happen with the stock that we have below that? Are we going to have a lot of these people, now that I'm dealing with so many property managements, are out of town owners that just saw that I can invest my money here in Coos Bay. So this is a much bigger problem, but this is the homeless response team and this is what you've been. So.
Any questions, anything for Scott?
Yeah, I have a question. It's been bothering me. So you've got this family and they've got an increase in rent that they can't afford. Are they back at ground zero again? I mean, are they done? Yeah, that's.
Okay, I just heard about this 20 minutes ago.
Well, I mean, what would happen overall? I mean, this probably isn't the only time that that's happened. I was just talking to a lady out of Lakeside earlier this morning who gets a increase, rent increase every year, and it's just about she's at her limit, and she's wanting to know what could be done. And I'm thinking about that her rent has gone in the last few years from. Well, when she started, she was at $300 a month, and now she's at $900 a month. It's getting difficult for her. She's on disability.
So the law says you can only raise it 10%. So, she's only going to get a $90 raise next year, and then not. It just goes up and up. And the year after that, it's 100. And the year after that, it's 110. Her money that's coming in, fixed income seniors, is not going to offset that. This is a societal problem, and I don't know if it's not the job for the city to fix, not our little nonprofits. It's not even the states. I'd like to think that we talk about this because we know that it's our community and we're going to need to do something. Seniors is on my hit list, even though I deal with youth and families. It is the #1 growing homeless problem right now. Seniors. We've done a really good job with veterans. If we went back a few years ago as veterans, if we talk about right now, we have done a dent. We've put at least a dent in youth and families, but it's seniors now that are going to have to be dealt with next. So besides mental health homelessness, I don't even think we can quantify that one at this point.
Scott, I'm a little offended that every time you said senior, you looked at me. So the senior.
I was looking at David.
If I were looking at me, I would feel quite obvious here.
I believe we're about the same age, so don't take it personal.
Just as a response to the senior, challenge, kind of aging out of homes. There's a documentary this Sunday at the Egyptian Theater that this community came together to get, to have brought here. It's called No Place to Go. It was filmed in Portland, but it's relevant because all across our nation, folks are getting kind of costed out of their homes. So, yeah,
Free
2
popcorn.
o'clock. Yeah. And there's going to be a panel discussion, some folks there. So,
Yeah, I saw the, what Social Security COLA was 2.5%. So if rents can go up 10% and you're on a fixed income and you get 2.5%, you're gonna be losing year after year quickly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, I think for many seniors that are in that situation, looking at some kind of housing voucher is really the only solution if you can't make your rent payments at this point, because that gets tied into your wage. If your landlord will accept a Section 8 voucher, that does provide some relief, but of course you have to get through the wait list of potentially 2 years. So I've advised people that I've worked with, try to get on the housing list early, because you don't know, it may be helpful even if it's a year or two down the road before you actually get it. It could be something that allows you to stay where you are. Because a lot of our folks that I work with that are on disability, they get $950 a month. Then the average rent is $950 for, a studio or a small 1-bedroom. So that's your whole check, so. Yeah, doesn't pencil out very good, does it?
Doesn't not.
All right, let's see, let's go ahead and move to item number 4, which is response office updates. And I'll just kick off the discussion. This is just a continuation of the discussion we had last month as well. And the executive committee of this has had this discussion a couple of times about the office and its future. And we had some discussions about, potentially looking at other entities that may want to take on the official role or the functions of the homeless office. We had talked about ending the homeless office potentially, and those seem to be still the main things. I think as executive, we want to keep bringing this up to the group because we're going to need to probably make a decision here shortly. I think, I might say that the end of June, when these grants are done, may be a good time to look at sort of what our next steps would be. I reviewed the contract with the state to set up the office pretty closely, and I did share it with my county council. I have not gotten their feedback. I might advise you all that have counsel available that you have them look at the agreement as well. What I looked at reading the official agreement is we have met the contract requirements by the state. The requirements were that we would maintain the office for 2 years, that we would come up with a 5-year plan. And we seem to have met all the requirements that were a part of that. The 3 entities, the city of Coos Bay, the city of North Bend, and the county subsequently entered into a 3-way agreement around that. And which obligated us to work together in those efforts. That grant, if my reading is that we also have an ability to end that agreement. It basically says that if 2 of those 3 entities decide to end it, it is basically ended. And again, because we've met the state requirements, we wouldn't seem to have any consequences of doing that. And so, again, if you represent one of those entities, you may want to speak with the powers that be within those and gauge what their interest or what their value is, because it appears from my reading of the contract that 2 of the entities, if not 3, could all decide that they wanted to end it, or they could decide that they wanted to continue it. But you shouldn't trust my reading, and you probably shouldn't just trust the county's council reading. You probably should get your own independent verification of that interpretation. So if what I said is true, then we would have an ability to do, we could have some ability to do different things about this. So over the last meeting, we had a discussion about trying to find other organizations, because that was the other thing that we had discussed. It was another organization would take on these functions, which really the functions were partly coordination functions, which the office kind of did somewhat, I would say. We weren't maybe in the best position to do coordination because we were not necessarily a service providing organization. So that was one thought we had about trying to find other organizations that might want to take this over. We had talked about, well, we have some money in the bank. Potentially that could help maybe an organization be interested in taking on this function. It appears that we have not had any success, those of us that have been working on this, finding an entity to do that. We've sort of thrown out some sort of a who's list of who does this work in our community. I think it's been pretty extensive in terms of our understanding of who does this work. And I don't know if, Nicole, you want to speak any more specifically about your work on that, although I think all of us have done some sort of sleuthing about whether entities would be interested.
So I initially, it's probably been about 3 months ago, I think it was before the start of the year, had a conversation with a couple of members of the Deborah Center board. They're not really operating at their full capacity right now, just kind of rethinking what level of service they're going to be able to come back and provide. So I just, asked when and if would they be interested, and there was just not enough certainty there. So that led me to have a conversation with Orca. They would have been the organization that would have stepped up and taken on this initially under the 4123. That is how many of the other pilots were organized. While they've made some great pathways back to what we all know Orca to be, they're not quite there yet. And so, be mindful of adding to their workload as they're trying to rebuild. So definitely interested in, helping where they can, but taking on kind of this coordination was not necessarily, something they were ready to quite step into. So those are the two that I've kind of reached out and had direct conversations with to date.
Those were the two obvious ones that I think many of us had identified. There had been some discussion about other entities that do some work with housing. I mean, Barrier First Step does a lot around housing. My organization, Coos Health and Wellness, has done quite a bit around housing. I would say that my thought about that is that most of those organizations, their housing is narrowly focused on a certain population. They're not general housing providers. We focus on housing for people with mental illness. ADAPT focuses on Barrier First Step focuses on people with addiction needs. So those entities are not ideally situated to take on this general role. And I've not heard any lot of interest in those organizations sort of taking on this broader role. They're very busy with what they're doing now. So I just put this out. I mean, we don't have anything to vote on today around this. But it appears that the situation at this point is we have not been able to locate other entities that might be interested in taking on this role that we would feel maybe comfortable about. And at this point, it doesn't appear that we have the operational money and resources to continue the office on our own steam either. So that kind of narrows the decision points. So, and if that's the case, then it seems to me the obvious answer is then we look at winding down the office. And I did also ask council that I think if we were to do that, there is some remaining funds. Basically, the grant with the state says that if you've met the obligations, then you can use these funds in a way to support other efforts in the community that meet the intended targets of this. And we've already done that. So this group, we took some of our operational money and we gave some of it to the Salvation Army as they were starting their project. So, if we were just to decide that we were going to sort of end this office as it is, and I would say that, a lot of these efforts are going to continue. The current grants are still under the city of Coos Bay. So these efforts are not going away by any means. They would continue. what we may lose, though, is that ability to have an organization that's really just looking at grant opportunities as a whole and trying to, that really is what the office did, is it looked at the opportunities there and it tried to match them up with community partners that might be able to do that work. And we would lose that potential ability within a community of having that function. But again, if we can't do it adequately and we can't get a community partner to adequately, I'm not sure what the other solution would be. So if we in the end decide that we're going to wind down operations, then we could look at what's in the bank for this and then allocate it in ways that we thought would make the most sense to our community to support either new efforts or existing efforts. There is a small things that the office purchased, some computers, some equipment. I did also have a question to my county council about what are the rules governing those, because those assets would have to be taken care of in a legal way. And I'm not sure exactly what that is. Sometimes nonprofits can donate it, but we're governmental. So I don't know, if we would split it or if we would donate to a nonprofit. We don't have to have those discussions now, but just to kind of have us thinking about our decision making and what that might mean and the things that we might have to come deal with if we chose that path. And I just would put a suggestion out that, here we are middle of March. So we probably want to have a clear discussion and looking at a vote probably in May at our May meeting about really coming to terms about what we want to do, because if we're going to look at, especially when these grants come to end, that's going to be the end of June period. And we might need a little time to organize ourselves after we make a decision. So that's enough for me. Again, I'm just trying to represent the discussions that we've had around this on the executive and have it here in the public setting so that we're completely transparent about our process and giving people enough opportunity so they can give us feedback if they have specific feedback, so we can do that in our decision making also is important. So I'll leave it open for any other comments or questions or anything from the board at this point. Stephanie, did you want, it's hard to tell if you're
That's okay. Sorry, I couldn't get my button to work there.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't think that there's really much more than what you've already said that I could add. I think it really states where we are, and I appreciate that.
Thanks, Stephanie. Ron, Nicole, did you guys want to add anything?
Well, no, I think that's what you said is a bit much what we've talked about in the executive session. So ditto.
I would agree. I think that's good representation of where we've kind of been trying to wrap our brains around. I think there are also some known opportunities to support some projects that didn't have funding that happened in the community. So I think there are, some ways we can look at the existing dollars that would need to be spent out of the county's dollars. I don't think we'll have a hard time attaching them to something.
No, I don't
Yeah.
think there's a number of worthy efforts going on currently. So, but again, what I would say is, we'll have some time next month to have this discussion, rehash it, and then what probably would make sense is to try to put something on the agenda for May. And then also give time for the board members that are not here to weigh in and get some feedback from their constituents too around this. So. Okay. Let's move on to 5, which is public comments. We'll see if there's anybody signed up.
The vast
I think Bob is it. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I think that, as you know, I have voiced repeated concerns about the outcomes of what we've been doing for the last several years and how we haven't had any reports given to the public on what those outcomes are. And I continue to have that concern. And when you link that to the response office and the future of it, Certainly, we have no way to measure. You have a 5-year plan, but how many of the goals have been assessed and what progress we've made on those goals? I haven't ever heard a discussion of that topic in all the years that I've been part of this. I'm still waiting to hear that kind of a discussion, and it hasn't happened. Now you're at a point where you have no staff for an office and no prospects of, good prospects of continuing it. How do we report back to the public what we've done with this money? I mean, the public deserves to know what we've been doing. I haven't heard or seen much in the way of publicity about the successes that have been generated and Scott's work, the Salvation Army's work. We have some good stories to tell the public, and they haven't been told. And I think that this group, as it's going forward and going into a big transition of homeless response office probably going away, that the least we can do is get some kind of package put together to present to the public. You've got the money, hire somebody to do it. You know, I think back to when we wrote the 10-year plan, Coos County plan. Crystal Shoji and I wrote that. Crystal has some great experience. There's probably other people out there too that would be able to, you know, to compile a report based on the goals of the 5-year plan. So I'm really trying to encourage that something like that happens as we're going into the end of this biennium and some of the money going away. There will be people who are going to, I mean, think back to the hot-blooded discussions that happened in this room around homelessness. Do you really think that energy has gone away? Have people just given up on the issue and don't care anymore? I don't think so. So I just think that maybe that it's something worth looking into is hiring somebody to put a report together.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. All right, I think that's it. I think you already did your update, so. All right, next item is board comments.
Start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. And I acknowledge you've said that several times. What I can say is I know that Eric and Ashley were working on a review of the goals and compiling some information to show some of those were met. I do think we every month talk about that, the work that these organizations are doing. There is some, but are we putting it on paper and putting it someplace? I agree. That's not happening.
Yeah.
I think that could happen. These numbers are also getting reported at the state level. So there is a paper trail of sorts. It's just maybe not happening in the way that this local community can absorb it. So
Exactly.
I heard you, and I think what we can do is grab what was already started
Sure.
by Eric and Ashley, probably round that out some. We've got some great numbers about meeting some of these metrics. We can add to that. It's not going to be this 5-year 40-page document that costs us $130,000, but it will be a piece. So we could certainly do that.
Well, and just a follow-up note that I didn't mention at the time. One of the things that remains very curious to me is what has been the cost effectiveness of the local ordinances that Coquille and North Bend and Coos Bay have put in place? What is the cost effectiveness of enforcing those ordinances? I did a 6-week follow of the police log just to try to get an idea, and I'm estimating that we're talking maybe 2,500 incidents over the course of a year. What does that cost the police department? Is it an effective use of the money? Probably is, but we don't know. We've never looked at it. We don't even know what the number is. You know, and yet we're continue to spend the money on doing this. Haven't looked at the North Bend police report that they recently publicized. I don't know if those numbers are in their report, for example. I talked at the beginning of this, I talked to both the police chiefs and encouraged them to do that kind of an update and to put it on the homeless response webpage. Of course, that never happened. But to me, that's a fiscal responsibility of this group to prove, or not to prove, but to demonstrate whether or not this tool of making people move from one location to another and continue their homelessness, moving them around the community, that this is somehow an effective use of our police department's time. Hello, what's the answer?
Right. Thank you, Bob. Ron? More comments?
Oh, more comments. Yeah, I agree with, it's always good to hear success stories. And, I think that, well, maybe I shouldn't tell you what I think. Come to think about it. You know, I believe that I think I've seen progress in the last few years. And so I would find it very interesting to see the stories, because I haven't heard that, but that would be fun and interesting and productive, I believe.
Thanks, Ron. Stephanie?
Yeah, just to address some of Bob's most recent statements, we know that is not the best use of funding, and the city of Coos Bay, because we have had a homeless work group, as you're aware, for quite a while, we have asked for data to be kept on that, and we know that it was a significant impact on the resources that have to serve our community in a variety of ways, which is why the ordinances and community resource officers and things like that, which North Bend has now as well, were put into place because it is an impact. How that relates to what's happening from this group that was you know, kind of born out of that, you know, the next step from the work group that brought together the community, the county, and service organizations is that when you take and you put somebody into housing and get them off the street, then you're going to reduce that impact. But I mean, we just talked about rents increasing and, you know, the cost of living not moving as quickly, and the problems that are created that really were by statute. Economists looked at that as soon as that was implemented, the rent caps. And one of them said to me that was not a very good move on the state's part to try to cap rents, because it's going to create unintended consequences. And we're seeing that. And I live on half of a fixed income too, so I feel it. I mean, you know, it's getting this group in doing what it's doing to take people and moving them from the streets to housing is going to have a positive impact. Is it enough? Probably not. So, you know, I mean, until we look at this as a national and a state issue, you know, we're just treating the symptoms of a variety of things. And we're doing the best we can. And, you know, unfortunately, it appears that at this point, you know, the people sitting at the dais here have other things that they have to do as well in operating a city or county or a department or, you know, whatever they're doing. And, you know, if we can't move this to an organizations that's set up to handle that, then it becomes very difficult, because again, you're throwing a rock in the ocean, basically. So I don't know if it doesn't answer your question. I think it's a bigger problem than what just this group can do.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I don't know if I'll just keep my comments brief since I spoke too much anyway today, but to me, the successes really are, you know, the things I look forward to is, you know, seeing the fruition of the family shelter going up. You know, being able to tour and see some people that get to live there that otherwise don't have a place. And also I know one of my friends, you know, his daughter is in one of the housing that the AYA is supporting, and she's there with her 2 kids, and they would be homeless if it weren't for that program. So to me, those aren't glamorous in the same way, and you know, people don't want to people in those places, they don't really want to advertise their situation either. So it's not like you can go out and out them about that. It's not really fair to them, but those successes are happening, and I know that every one of those people, their lives are being touched in a significant way. So and those would be people that we would see out on our streets, or they would be at the mission, or they would be, you know, they'd be hoteled temporarily for a while. And so I know those folks, at least for now, have a better solution. So I've been a part of a lot of plan development. Honestly, it's a lot of work for not a lot of payoff. That's been my experience. We plan, but it doesn't really, it's really the boots on the ground that's actually gets it done. So, so of course I have to do a biennial plan for my work. So coming up, I'm like, really? I gotta do this again? So that's my skepticism around planning a bit. All right, guys, we're at the end of our time. I kept this at
You
4:04.
did,
Yeah.
you did.
All right.
Yeah, we started a little late, we're ending a little late.
All right.
At an hour, good job you.
Thank you all. Go ahead.